Merry 2022! I hope you had a brilliant New Year, Christmas, solstice, Festivus, whatever it is that you celebrate, and also that you're better at coping emotionally with the return to work than I am. Anyway, have you ever started a craft project and by halfway through you're just not enjoying it anymore? Have you had to really force yourself to hurriedly catch up on a sal that you fell massively behind on? Or maybe you've knitted something and looked at the final finished piece and just wondered what you were thinking. Well, this video is for you. And also, if you've never experienced any of those things, please teach us your ways, you amazingly functional person you. This new year, apart from the usual diet and the nail-biting stoppage that I fail at most years, I want to take control of my crafting and guide it in a bit more of a purposeful direction. So you are hereby invited to join me in the Intentional Crafting Challenge 2022. Hopefully we can help keep each other on track a little bit this year. But first, if you're new here, hello, my name is Michelle. I'm a proud multi-crafter who loves to make all of the things and also encourage you to make all the things too. But today I want to encourage you to do it in a bit more of a responsible way for a change. Does this make me mature now? I think it just might. So, what is all this about a challenge? I'm not going to waffle your ear off here, partially because I'm trying to get better at that, and also partially because I don't remember when I last charged the camera. But the basic premise is this. Like I expect a lot of people, I see a new pattern or a project that's going around or a stitch along that's starting and I get so overexcited. I give very little or potentially no thought at all to how this piece will fit into my life, and instead I just get completely overcome with FOMO. Sometime later I snap out of it, everybody else is finished, the hashtag is dead, and I'm just left here holding this half-finished project that it turns out, in the cold light of day, I don't even actually like. So to help out future me the next time she gets overexcited about something she shouldn't, I'm going to give her a helpful list of guidelines. If she follows those guidelines when choosing new projects, then she'll enjoy it. If she doesn't follow those guidelines, well, that's on her. Now, it's unlikely, but it is technically possible that this sounds very familiar to you. You see, back in July, my second or third ever video was about this very same thing, albeit a little bit less fleshed out. We went through my hibernating works in progress, decided whether each of them should be finished or not, and ended with some gratuitous frogging footage. To decide whether each thing should be kept or discarded, I'd come up with some capsule wardrobe rules because that's something I've been interested in for a while. And also because dropping everything I'm doing to start a new wearable that caught my eye is kind of a problem with me. I'm happy to report that those rules have really been working and it's helped me to start creating clothes that I really like instead of clothes that I like on other people. That's an important distinction. So there is going to be a little bit of repetition in the list that I make for myself today, but it's an ongoing process, so this makes sense. We're not completely throwing the previous list out, we are tweaking it for 2022. The big difference this time round is that I am inviting you to join me. I'm like 99.9% sure that I am not the only one who could benefit from being a little bit more intentional about project selection. So to help you get started with this process, I've put a link down in the description with some printables and social media graphics that should hopefully help you put your thoughts in order and come up with the best list for yourself. Now let's get stuck in. Introspection hat on. That was going to be a bit, but I forgot to bring the hat with me, so just imagine I put a hat on then. Step 1. Assess the situation. I find that the easiest way to get started figuring out what you do and don't like is just to simply look back at things you've already made and see if you can spot any patterns. You can see here I've made 2 lists in Notion, one for projects I particularly love and one for projects that I particularly don't. I'll also provide a link to a Notion template for anyone else who happens to use this, but it's essentially just a table and I've added some colour-coded categories because I am fancy and unnecessary. It is really, really important to be honest here. There are some projects that I really wanted to see on this list and I feel like I should love, but the truth is I just don't use or wear them. Maybe I enjoyed the process of making them, but then that can't win out over something I also enjoyed, but that I also use and wear all the time. On the flip side, there are things that it makes me sad to see on the disliked list, but truth is I just didn't enjoy them and there's no point denying it. So I can immediately spot some patterns here. The pieces I liked tend to fit the colour scheme that I gave myself in the previous video, whereas things I disliked tended to veer away from that list. A small but important victory for past me. Well done. The favourites list is mostly wearables and practical household items like my cactus project bag, while I can see at a glance that knitting seems to be the major offender in terms of dislikes, so I should really take extra care choosing knitting projects in future. Previously I said anything goes for socks, but as we can see it turns out if they're too fancy I don't wear them and then get sad. If they're plain and simple I love them to bits and wear them to death. Exhibit A. I can also see that cross-stitch projects I did out of love for the pattern itself still make me happy even if they're not actually displayed anywhere and are just kept in a drawer once they're finished. Whereas patterns that I start through stitch-along FOMO or only because I like the end result will end up in the dislike list if I'm not actually a fan of the process of stitching them. Confetti is bad, okay? Now, obviously this method can't tell us everything, so I've given it a really big think, stolen a couple of items from the previous video, and I've identified a few other things that should go on the list too. Step 2. Make the list. Your mileage may vary on the number of guidelines that you want to set for yourself, or maybe you can condense it all down into one golden rule. But for me personally, I find that cross-stitch and embroidery is kind of its own separate thing over here, and then I have knitting, crochet and sewing, which can all be lumped together. So it's almost like two completely different sets of guidelines that I'm just going to smush together for the purposes of the video. Okay, here we go. Rule 1. No mystery mix. Sals, cals, etc. should be joined sparingly and with good reason. For example, I do intend to join the Peppermint Purple Year of Blackwork stitch along this year. That's a mouthful. I completed it in 2020 and thoroughly enjoyed it. I love blackwork, as you may know. The best part is there's not even a rush to get started with it because it's so easy to catch up on, so I can kind of ease myself into the new year before worrying about that. Rule 2. Embroidery or cross-stitch projects are about the process. Smallish projects with blocks of bright colour are ideal. This rule could basically be summed up as stitch more Satsuma Street. I can of course still tackle bigger projects too, but I just need to really consider whether I'll enjoy the process. There will be more on that in my next video. With other crafts, make mostly clothes and practical things. That could mean sewing project bags, crocheting storage baskets, making resin needle minders because the first ones I made were crap. It's not all about clothes, but things just need to have a point for me to really enjoy them. Rule 4. Clothes should go together as a capsule wardrobe. Capsule wardrobe means black, white, grey, purple, green, navy, gold. Socks can be any colour. This rule has been working really well for me. The palette is quite broad, so I get plenty of variety, but it's still pretty coherent, so I'm keeping that as is. Style should be comfortable, with a focus on one-piece outfits like dresses and playsuits. Because, to get real for a moment, if it takes me more than 30 seconds to get dressed on a morning, I am staying in pyjamas all day. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. The majority of items should be casual and easy to wear, with only occasional fanciness thrown in. I get too worried with things that took a long time to make or had complicated lace patterns that I'm going to snag or otherwise damage them, and it makes me not want to wear them. So again, there's kind of no point. Also, it turns out big open lace patterns feel really weird on the tops of your feet. Necklines should ideally be deep V-necks or boat necks. Just personal preference there, that's all that is. And I'll pass it over to past me for this one. No more shawls. No more shawls. Seriously, I mean it. This one is a rule, not a guideline, okay? Anyone sees me casting on a shawl, you have full permission to come at me. Rule 5. Stick to a budget. It costs so much money to keep up with the crafting Joneses, honestly. Fancy yarn is pricey. A big cross-stitch kit could set you back like £100. And do not even get me started on the cost of sewing. In the original video, I had £30 as a good sort of general upper limit for everyday projects, and I'm just going to stick with that. That sounds good to me. Rule 6. This is a big one. Prioritise projects with tools and materials I already own. I am not actually that bad for going out and buying pointless yarn and fabric. I generally just shop per project. But my real vice, and I know this is going to come as such a shock to most of you, is new crafts. They often come with an upfront requirement of new tools and materials, which costs money and space, both of which could be used for better things. Looking at you, soap making. So I should try and refocus on projects that I already have most of the stuff for, and turn new crafts into more of an occasional trickle rather than a constant deluge. Last but not least, Rule 7. Find opportunities to incorporate custom art. Now this is brand new today. This was not discussed at all in the previous video. And honestly, I'm not even really sure what this means. I also can't show you the project that inspired it yet, but hopefully in my next video. One of my personal goals for 2022 is to turn drawing into a habit and pick up some new digital art skills. That's skills with a Z. So incorporating that into more projects and videos seems like a good idea if I can pull it off. Step 3. Shazies! Everyone knows the threat of public humiliation is one of life's great motivators. So here I am sharing my personal challenge rules with all of you. Will it work? Will I shame myself into taking them seriously? Who knows? The bag of unfinished whips sitting right down there where you can't see it. Certainly hope so. So that is my 2022 intentional crafting challenge. On one hand, I really don't expect anyone else to get quite the same level of enjoyment from setting limits on themselves as I do. So it may very well just be me doing this challenge on my lonesome. But I also don't want to assume you're not interested, so on the off chance I have made some resources available. In the description of this video you will find a link to my Ko-fi page, which has social media templates, printables for those of you who prefer paper and pen, and a link to the Notion template for those of you who think paper and pen should be fired out of a cannon into the sun. You can share your own challenge guidelines with the hashtag intentionalcrafting2022. For each new start that we show on Instagram or talk about on YouTube, let's just take a moment to think and talk about how it stacks up against our self-imposed challenge. Again, hashtag intentionalcrafting2022. I'll be monitoring the tag and sharing my favourite challenge rules and projects in my stories all year long, assuming anybody actually joins in, that is. But you know what, if nobody does, I'll just lead by example and I'll come back and pester you all again next year. You have been warned. Whether you're officially joining the challenge or not, I hope seeing this process in action has given you some food for thought about your own crafting habit. The crafty community on basically every social media platform is really welcoming and supportive, but there is a fine line between being really enthusiastic and getting completely swept away in the rush of whatever everybody else is making. I think it's important to take a step back every now and then and just take a look at whether our hobby is making us the happiest it possibly can. And if the answer for you is yes, then again I beg, teach me your ways. Right, I will be back soon with a Crafter's Log Christmas Gifts edition, after which we should finally be back onto our usual Friday scheduling. In the meantime, have a brilliant rest of your day, a great start to your year, and keep making cool stuff. Bye! It's harder than it looks.